Yeah, there was another major update this week regarding a resignation, or it ties in with the resignation from a couple of months ago, the resignation of former World Bank President Jim Yong Kim, who was appointed by former President Obama. Here he is with Obama and Clinton in this picture. So that happened in January, and people were questioning the reason behind this. Jim Yong Kim said that he was leaving for a position at a private equity fund, but he was leaving well before his term. People calling the resignation abrupt. It was unexpected. This wasn't publicly announced beforehand, so they were wondering what was the real reason for the recent resignation of Jim Yong Kim. There were a number of theories. One of them was that Trump wanted to bring major reforms to the World Bank. He has criticized the World Bank regularly, and further suggesting that that is what President Trump was trying to do, and that Jim Yong Kim didn't resign on his own. He was probably pushed out of this position from the current administration. Trump is now nominating David Malpass, who is also a major critic of the World Bank, to lead it. So he's going to bring major reforms that he's promising. Along with that is a recent decision, this update just from this week, saying that the World Bank's legal immunity has been stripped. Major legal protections, basically giving the World Bank complete immunity from facing any kind of lawsuits, they've been removed. So the World Bank can now be sued for exploiting these other countries. This is opening the door for more lawsuits. The Supreme Court of the US has rejected World Bank claims of complete legal immunity, ruling that one of its arms can be sued in relation to lending activities. The 7-1 ruling could also open other American-based international organizations to the threat of lawsuits over financing overseas development. And people, some critics of this, I guess supporters of mainstream media, people who are trying to back the World Bank and criticize this decision, are saying, are framing this that it is a threat to the global order. Some media sources very thinly giving a very thinly veiled explanation, saying that this is going to shake up the new world order. Essentially, they're saying the global world order. Similar worries that people like George Soros or the Rothschilds have brought up with some of these current political movements, these populist movements, this push for sovereignty of countries versus these international, unelected, unaccountable international organizations. There is finally some major criticism and some people, it seems, in power that are trying to reform or completely get rid of some of these institutions. So the World Bank could be a target, and definitely seems that if David Malpass is confirmed, this is who is being nominated to head the World Bank, that will likely happen. They talk about one specific lawsuit here. They touch on a couple here. Obviously, there's so many issues with the World Bank, many examples of this type of exploitation, but they're saying for the World Bank, it means that it is now facing having to defend against a suit by members of a fishing community in India who contend that their homes and livelihoods were damaged by pollution from a coal power plant that was financed by the World Bank's private sector lending firm. Their lending arm, the Washington, D.C.-based International Finance Corporation. General Secretary of the Association for the Struggle of Fisher Workers' Rights, one of the plaintiffs in this case, welcomed the historic ruling, saying, quote, "This is a huge victory for these people and a major step towards holding the World Bank accountable for the negative impacts their investments are causing." This outlet points to a previous coverage on this community and the bank's refusal to recognize its claims as part of its 2015 evicted and abandoned investigation. The project found that 3.4 million people were physically or economically displaced by World Bank funded development projects just between 2004 and 2013, and that the bank often failed to follow its own rules for properly resettling these communities. The legal case surrounded a 1945 law, which granted international organizations, this law going back to 1945, gave international organizations, quote, "the same immunity from suit as foreign governments." The court had decided how that law was impacted by a second one from 1976, excluding commercial activities by foreign governments from this immunity. In the February 27th ruling, so just in this ruling from earlier this week, this ruling, they say, did not reportedly affect either the United Nations or the International Monetary Fund, as they do have complete immunity under their charters still. So those are possible, I guess, next steps people might point to. The IMF, the UN, they still do have this sort of immunity as of now, at least. They go on here, they say the World Bank argued that the exclusion of the immunity of commercial activities did not apply to it. If it could be pursued, be pursued for its development loans, the bank maintained, it would become a target for lawsuits around the world that would cripple its ability to perform its core mission of fighting poverty and promoting developments. That's the excuse that the World Bank is trying to use, saying that they should have immunity because it's going to affect our core mission of promoting development. Supreme Court didn't buy the World Bank's excuse here, or their attempt to get out of this. The Supreme Court responded saying those concerns are inflated that the World Bank was trying to bring up. Again, other people trying to make an issue out of this, saying that it's going to create uncertainty for international organizations involved in finance. So you can imagine, again, people, the Rothschilds, owners of the Rothschild Bank, are bringing up similar issues, and they're saying these international organizations, other people, again, using the term, the global order is at risk. Some people are trying to spin this here, and I want to look at some of the specific statements from the nominee to replace Jim Yong Kim. So Jim Yong Kim, that was a major resignation. People were wondering in January, why did he resign? That Supreme Court ruling, definitely interesting that is happening now. And the person that is supposed to be replacing Obama's appointee, the person that is nominated by Trump, David Malpass, is a major critic of the World Bank. Here's some quotes that they included here, saying the World Bank may be poised for a shakeup, with President Donald Trump planning to nominate David Malpass, who has been a critic of the bank, to lead the institution focused on global poverty. Malpass's selection was confirmed by a senior administration official who spoke on condition of anonymity because the official wasn't authorized to comment publicly on personnel decisions. This is from a few weeks ago when this was first being brought up, but it is confirmed that David Malpass is the nominee. We're just waiting to see if this is confirmed at this point, so we'll know soon if he will be leading the World Bank. But they talk about his criticism of the World Bank. They're saying now the Undersecretary for International Affairs at the Treasury Department, Malpass, has been an outspoken skeptic of the 189-nation World Bank, a leading source of funding for economic development. The World Bank provides low-cost loans for projects around the world. Among its key missions is, they claim, helping combat poverty in developing countries. People obviously question what how authentic they are in this mission. Of course, Malpass, they point out, has called for curbing the World Bank's financial reach and has criticized its lending to China, one of the bank's leading recipients of aid. The World Bank's directors approve his nomination, Malpass would be positioned to overhaul an institution he has argued has become too focused. This is what Malpass himself has said, who might be leading the World Bank. Even he's said that it's become too focused on its expansion. The World Bank has become too focused on its own expansion and prestige rather than on the interests of poor countries. And Trump has made similar criticisms. So an interesting pick for Trump to nominate to head the bank. Another quote from Malpass says, a host of organizations are creating mountains of debt without solving problems. Just creating debt without solving any problems. Malpass has also criticized the World Bank, saying that. And further, another quote says, huge organizations like the World Bank and the many multilateral development banks have created an environment where their own growth ends up being as important, or more important, I guess, as their clients' growth. Stuart Patrick, senior fellow in the global governance at the Council on Foreign Relations, said that Malpass appears intent on weakening a World Bank that is already rethinking its role in a world with broader, greater access to capital markets, but also chronic humanitarian crises. Certainly seems like he's the wrong guy if you wanted to strengthen the World Bank, Patrick says. He has such a record of criticism of the World Bank, he seems to have bought into the sovereignty mindset. It's a very odd way for him to frame this whole criticism, I guess. I don't know if this is trying to be a knock on Malpass by Patrick, but he's saying Malpass is such a critic of the World Bank. He seems to have bought into the sovereignty mindset of the administration that global institutions are a threat. Having Malpass at the helm of the World Bank would fit a pattern inside the Trump administration of tapping officials to lead institutions whose core missions they have publicly questioned or opposed. Trump himself, his criticism of these sorts of organizations more broadly, they say the Trump presidency has defined much of its mission by challenging the global institutions that emerged out of World War II, such as NATO and what eventually became the World Trade Organization. The president sees the rules set by these organizations as putting the United States at an economic disadvantage. That's what Trump has criticized many of these organizations, these post-war organizations. And also interesting, again, the wording that they're using here, Jacob Rothschild made some recent comments, and that was actually the exact wording that he used. And some people shared this article saying that Rothschild was worried about the future of the New World Order. That is essentially what he's saying here, but the actual specific words that he's using, he's talking about the New World Economic Order, and this was the specific quote, sort of an ominous, I guess, troubling kind of quote coming from Jacob Rothschild, of all people. He invokes 9/11 and the 2008 financial crisis. This was Jacob Rothschild midway last year. Jacob Rothschild voicing concern about the global financial system that was established after World War II. Exact same phrasing that critics of this World Bank move by President Trump are using, interestingly, that it's going to shake up these specific institutions put in place after World War II. Billionaire banker points to the U.S.-China trade war, specifically bringing up, again, Malpass criticizing how China is using the World Bank, how it's favoring them over the U.S. Rothschild on the other side of this issue, obviously like betting against the U.S. in favor of this international order as he's trying to push or describe it. But he brings up those exact same things. And look at the actual quote that he gave. This was from Jacob Rothschild midway last year. He says, in 9/11 and in the 2008 financial crisis, the powers of the world worked together with a common approach. Again, that's pretty creepy coming from Jacob Rothschild. I mean, think about what that sentence might mean coming from Jacob Rothschild. The whole world worked together with a common approach after those crises. Cooperation today, Rothschild said, is proving much more difficult. This puts at risk the post-war economic and security order. Look at how critics of the Trump World Bank move are talking about that. It will affect the global institutions that emerged out of the Second World War. It will affect the post-war order. It's exactly what Rothschild was saying midway last year, talking specifically about the China issue as well. So very interesting. And it seems like some of these critics of what's going on are bringing up some of the same talking points, coincidentally, that Rothschild was midway. This was last summer. He was talking about this. So very interesting. I will continue to follow this. Other updates with the World Bank. Looks like Trump is signaling some other major reforms that might be coming very soon. See if there's anything else going on with Jim Yong Kim. He's now going to work for some kind of private firm, but another individual to keep an eye on, definitely. Let me know what you think. I do have links to the source article and my Patreon account in the video description, and support the channel on patreon.com/realityreader. Even $1 or $2 makes a huge difference, helps me keep talking about these issues. Patreon.com/realityreader. Also have a link to my PayPal, paypal.me/realityreader. And if anything happens here on YouTube, I am also on Steemit. You can follow me there for more updates. Steemit.com, Reality Reader, my name over there. Let me know what you think. I will follow up soon. Thank you.